One of the things that surprises a lot of guys or shocks them is once they start going on dates, the cost of dating can actually get really high really, really quickly. And especially now during the apocalypse period where a lot of people are struggling with money, it's becoming more important than ever to find cheap ways to go on dates that are still going to impress each and every single woman. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share with you 7 date ideas that are cheap and are still going to impress. And these aren't just random ideas that are thrown out there. These are dates that I personally have gone on many times and have had great success with. So stay tuned and we'll get rolling. So date idea number 1 is one of my original dates. And I went on a date like this so many times. What I would do is I would go quickly to the grocery store before I'd meet up with her, and I would buy a baguette, a nice big baguette, and 2 different types of like dip, right? So bread dip, chip dip, whatever you want to get. And what I do is I just turn up with that and a blanket and we'd go and we'd sit in a park and we would pull apart the baguette and dip it in the dip and eat the baguette with dip in the park. It's the world's cheapest picnic. It used to only be like $5 Australian. Probably you'd need about $7 now, but that was a super cheap date that was really nice and romantic without costing a fortune. The second cheap date idea is to go for a walk. Now, it is important where you go for a walk. I usually advise, especially when it comes to a first date, don't go somewhere where you're likely to be isolated with her unless you already have a lot of rapport and trust with her. For example, she's friends of a friend or something like that. But if she's otherwise a total stranger, pick a walk somewhere where there are going to be lots of other people. Now, I myself live near the beach, so a walk on the beach is something I do a lot with women. But if you don't live near a beach, I highly recommend there are some nice urban walks around your area. If there's a nice lake, if there's a nice, areas that are frequented by a lot of people but are really beautiful to be, recommend going for a walk in those areas. And an afternoon is a really great idea as long as the weather is warm enough. My third great idea for a cheap date, but not a free date this time, is to just do a little bit of Googling in your area for interesting desserts. So just type interesting desserts in Gold Coast, interesting desserts in New York, interesting desserts in, Syracuse, whatever area it is that you live in. Just do a bit of Googling because there are almost always cafes somewhere that are doing something unique and interesting dessert-wise. And what I'll do is I'll say to her, you know what, I just read about this apple pie flavored gelato waffles that are being made, and I totally want to check it out. You want to come with me on Tuesday night? That kind of thing makes the date, it makes it unique, as opposed to just going, hey, let's grab a coffee somewhere and chat. You can do that. But if you pick a date like that where the dessert sounds interesting and different, and it makes it feel like you've put in more effort. Even if you just keep trying that same place, like with 7, 8, 9 girls in a row, each woman's going to feel like you put in a little bit of effort for the date and just didn't do the same boring thing every other guy does. The fourth date idea that is a lot of fun, I think it to some degree depends on the size of the city you're around, but look for festivals and local events going on in your area. Most decent-sized cities have way more festivals going on than you'd think, different kinds of festival, like food and wine festival or a tea festival or even a medieval festival. Like, they've got all sorts of things going on quite regularly. And one of the things I recommend is keep your nose down and see what's happening in your area. Again, make Google your best friend, because these are a lot of fun to just wander around. And the great thing about this, and I guess some of the other date ideas I've thrown out, is that they will give you things, they will give you a lot of stimuli to talk about. So if you're wandering around a festival with her, there's going to be lots of things to do and see, and it's going to take a lot of the pressure off you for your conversation style as well. And it doesn't have to cost anything because most of these festivals are completely free to attend. My fifth cheap date idea is to just go to a museum or an exhibition. So again, in many cities, not all, but in many cities, there are museums, art galleries, historic museums, things like this. There are free ones around. Because I know some of the big ones can cost a lot of money, but there's almost always galleries and showings and things that are going to be completely free. Just look up in your area, find what's around, because again, this gives you, it's more interesting than having a random coffee, and it's actually doing an activity. It's something that gives you something to talk about before and afterwards, like when you're out there, and it takes a lot of the pressure off your back. Number 6 is that, again, many cities have weekend markets around. So if there's like a Sunday markets going on, go and check it out with her. Again, it's the same thing. It's completely free to attend. And if you do want to get food, the food at markets is usually super cheap as well, which makes it a lot of fun. Now for number 7, if you're particularly, I think you have to be a little bit more social or adventurous for this one, but I love this. I've done this a number of times and it is so much fun. Go with her to like op shops and just play dress ups, like find fun, funny outfits that you could wear. You know what I mean? Like just go into the change room, try different things, get things for her to try on, like, you know, just funny stuff. You can laugh at each other. You can have a really great time in these op shops. And the bonus is every now and again, you're going to find something that actually looks good. I know a lot of guys avoid op shops for clothing, but sometimes you find really amazing stuff. It can be a little bit harder for guys to find great clothing than women. My partner's a huge op shop shopper for herself, and she finds great stuff. For guys, it's a little trickier, but when you do find good stuff, it's like, you know, you can find a great outfit for $10, right? So that's a win in and of itself. But yeah, if you're willing to go out there and have a little bit of fun and kind of make fun of yourself, the op shop like dress up game is a great first date. Now, as I said, I've done all of these dates multiple times. I'm a huge fan of creating a date that's a little bit unique, that's a little bit different, because again, if a woman goes on a date with you and it's a date that she would want to tell her friends about, even if you weren't that interesting yourself, but she wants to tell her friends about it, it's going to make her assessment of what it was like hanging out with you much higher. And it's going to make her far more likely to want to go on another date with you. So yeah, putting in a little bit of creativity and doing something that's still cheap, but a little bit more impressive than just going for a coffee or even a meal with her is going to pay itself off in dividends. Are there any other cheap date ideas that you reckon I should have mentioned? Definitely let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. And check out some other videos over here if you like this one. I reckon you might like those as well. As always, take care, stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you soon.